You should be the host here.
We're laughing at you.
We're both Munster people, diehard Munster people, and we want them to do well.
The Red 78 with Alan Quinlan and Niamh Briggs. Nobody knows Munster rugby better.
I'd like to think I know a lot.
The Munster Rugby Podcast. Red 78 with Alan Quinlan and Niamh Briggs. Nobody knows Munster rugby better.
Welcome along to episode 15 of the Red 78, your one-stop shop for everything Munster rugby here on the Rugby channel. I'm Alan Quinlan, and alongside me always is Niamh Briggs. How are you, Niamh?
Not too bad, Quinny. Good weekend. Munster win. Tottenham didn't lose because the game was postponed. And we had a tough loss against Railway in the AIL. So mixed weekend. Mixed weekend,
so you were drowning your sorrows on Saturday, were you?
No. Games at 5 o'clock. Pubs are closed at 8. When you come on.
Yeah, so you couldn't go out and celebrate. We'll go through the match in a minute anyway, the Munster game. So if you want to get involved, you can tweet us at Rugby Channel 15 or leave a comment wherever you're watching this across the Rugby social media pages. And make sure you get the podcast straight to your phone. Just search the Red 78 wherever you get your podcasts and pre-subscribe. So we spoke last week about improvement against Ulster, grittiness, guts, determination, work rate, all that kind of stuff, which got them over the line in the Ulster game with 14 men for 65 minutes. And how it was going to be a difficult game going to Castres, the history between Munster and Castres and the challenge that presented itself. What did you make of, obviously, for anyone that doesn't know, Munster won the game 16-13, right at the end, Gavin Coombs' try. What did you make of the overall performance? And some critics out there saying, well, we saw more of the same, lack of accuracy, too many errors, too many mistakes, but they got there in the end. Is that a good sign of a team?
Yeah, absolutely. I think over the last couple of weeks, we've seen a big reaction in terms of the ability to dig in after that kind of game, I think that's a really good sign of a squad that, might not be playing unbelievably well, but are managing to dig out wins. And a couple of things. So, we spoke last week about how difficult it was going to be going down to Castres in terms of how negative and how much they try and negate how you play. And they did that very, very well, to be fair to them. The pitch was also appalling. And made it really difficult. But I actually saw chinks of light. I liked the fact that they tried it. I was frustrated that the execution obviously wasn't where it needed to be. But I liked the fact, that they had a couple of incidents. I liked the Scannell crossfield kick to Earls. And on the flip side, the next phase, Crowley kicks across the Conway and only for he has to check his run. That's a 2v1 with O'Mahony against the prop for Castres. So, and Scannell definitely had a few half breaks, which couldn't capitalise on getting anybody else into that kind of passing channel to support him. I thought Farrell had a very, very good game and obviously Coombs as well. So for me, though, the big thing was that they played with a little bit more tempo and pace that we hadn't really seen them play with. And so I think that's definitely an improvement. Does Jack Crowley dictate that we play with that pace? Maybe he does. I thought Murray, we were so used to seeing him slowing the thing down that he was just literally firing the ball out. And I thought he had a really good game. So, yeah, look, inaccuracies, poor execution at times, a lot of knock-ons, especially in and around that contact zone. They're easy fixes for me, and the fact that they look to push passes and have options out the back was definitely an improvement from some of the games we've seen this season.
But are they easy fixes? I think my take on the performance probably was it was a frustrating watch, and it was difficult. Cass made it difficult. Didn't really want to play a lot of rugby themselves. I think when they got their try and went ahead in the first half, after a promising start from Munster, I think their main goal was to just try and slow the game down and frustrate Munster and kick it a lot. Rory Cockett came on early in the game and he seemed to do that a lot. And, after conceding the try, Munster just kind of had a flat period and made a lot of errors and mistakes. The big concern for me is is the line-out. I know Niall Scannell went off and Dermot Byrne came on, and I don't think you can blame the hooker. I think some of it was maybe execution of throw, but I think they were just a little bit sluggish in their lifting and where the ball was called in the line-out. And they're the kind of things that jump out for people watching the game. When you get into a good position, you kick into the corner and then you lose the line-out. We know it can happen, but there was 3 or 4 from Munster the other night that they made a lot of difficult situations for themselves, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're right. I think set piece is king, especially in these kind of European away games. You look after your set piece, and they were frustrating because it was at critical moments when we lost the line out. And the flip side of that, I think, I do think a lot of the stuff are easy fixes, because I think you look at that try that Castres got, the first one especially, just really intelligent play by Ben Botica. Haley's in the line, he spots there's nobody in behind covering, be it the 9 or the opposite winger. I just put the chip in, and very well executed, to be fair to him. And so, yeah, look, the line out definitely at critical times. But when I was playing, I would have been very much like you, Quinny. I would have been very frustrated with things. Now that I'm coaching, they seem to have a different hat on, in terms of you start to reward or start to get excited about the I suppose the intent as opposed to the execution at times. So I thought Munster went with intent a lot at certain aspects. So we know in Munster's half they don't want the ball, they don't want to run the ball anywhere in their own half. They look to kick quite a lot. The previous time for me, though, is that, the first kind of few games over the season, is that when they got into a player strike or an opposition strike zone or in around that 22, that we continued to go 1 hour runners. I think we saw a lot of variation. I think that's down to Jack Crowley in terms of, passes back on the inside, passes that are going behind the back and front running players. Is it a case now that players aren't used to getting their hands on the ball that much, that they're almost it's the surprise element and they drop it? And I think if you're looking at this week, and a big focus for them this week has to be living in the moment to catch the ball. You can't think about what the defense are going to do. You've got to be able to, you can't control anything if you don't have the ball. So I think that's got to be a big focus for them. This ball in contact, got to be able to mind it better. It's those simple areas that allow teams back into the game. And I thought that Munster were much better than Castres, but they allowed them back into the game quite a bit. And I think that would be really frustrating.
We spoke about the reaction at the start. Is it a bit of an overreaction? Are we expecting too much? They've made the knockout stages. They're into the round 16 after 3 games. I think everyone would have taken that beforehand. And if we look at the 3 performances, Wasps obviously was a really unique situation, and we saw some brilliant attack there. Castres tried to stifle in Thomond Park and frustrate. They did that. It was scrappy. The atmosphere just died in the game. And this game it had similarities. It had that frustrating feel to it. But Gavin Coombs scores a try at the end. I'm just thinking that we have to give Munster credit and say they're in the knockout stage. They've won 3 from 3. They've won 2 games on the road, and certainly back when I was playing, if you won two games in a row on the road, away from home, it was seen as a brilliant thing. So we must take that into consideration. But I think still we're not seeing that kind of spark and that those passes sticking and those line breaks, and that was probably largely second string Castres side, and they had COVID cases before the game the other night. So on one hand, we shouldn't go overboard and say it's all negative, because I think the result is the result. But there is question marks there, and there is concerns about the attack, the shape, the cohesion of the team. And that's something that, I read some headlines and some people online saying that Munster won't win a trophy this season if they play like that. And, they got very fortunate in the end. Maybe it's a little bit harsh, but I think the players should be pretty proud to get the result as well, because, you don't take it for granted.
Completely. And look, I'm under no illusion. I'm not sure that Munster will win a trophy this season, only because of the likes of the teams that will be coming up, in that knockout stage, or the URC, the likes of the Leinsters and Racing, La Rochelle, Saracens, or not Saracens, Harlequins. Like, these are all really, really good teams. So I don't think I don't think a trophy at the end of the line is something that, it's not a case of they definitely won't. I just think that it'll be very difficult. Like, if you're coaching this squad now, Quinny, like, how do you change that? Like, well, how do you make them more efficient, more accurate on the ball?
Well, we don't know. We're not privy to everything they do in training, but
No, what would you do? Like, what would
I do? What would I do? I'd get the 15 players and try and run them as a team in as many sessions as you could all week. And I think back to when I played, when we had games where we lacked a little bit of continuity, I always thought, and I had these conversations with coaches, we do too much splitting up, forwards going over doing their bit, which you have to do your different segments. But we just did 5-10 minutes of a team run at the end. Yeah. And, over a number of weeks where we had some difficult performances when I played, that was one thing I just felt that we needed to run as a team more often for a longer period. Whether that be a half an hour, and have the coach stop starting saying you're in the wrong place here, and a little bit of man management there. I don't know what's happening, but I just think.
Sorry, do you think that it's in the attacking structure that it's the fact that they're not in the right place? What's making them drop the ball?
I think at times, the shape on phase is not good enough. And that's just different forwards going in different places, getting their lines right, being an option for the ball at the front of the pass, and the defender or the attacker at the back running properly as well. You want to try and fix defenders. And at no real stage did we actually execute something that really sent someone away in a line break, a clean line break, and looked like scoring. But look, it's easy for me to say that here, but I just think there is reasons. This team they're probably low on confidence and it's based on what we see. It's not what we're not making this up. If anyone wants to challenge me on that, we've seen a team quite blunt in their performances on numerous occasions this season. They had such a long break, and you're lacking a bit of cohesion and ability to train. There's a certain number of players and people that there's been a chopping and changing with the team as well. Johan has had to make changes. But if it was me, I think the quickest way is to try and get a group of players and train them and keep them together as much as you can. That's hard on the other players. And maybe they'll be better this week at home at Thomond Park. But they certainly did change the point of a contact in the game the other night. At one stage, they came off the back of a lineout, they went up the middle, then they peeled back down the blind, and there was guys running lines, but it just broke down. And if you can remember, Mike Haley kind of got picked up and he offloaded the ball. Conor Murray is scrambling back. And it's just easy to defend. So the attack is still a problem. And I think the effort levels out of the players, the work rate is really top notch. And defensively, they're very solid and they work their socks off. But so going back to the question you asked me, just work on attack more and more and more and more. That's all you can do.
I know, but what I'm saying to you is, if you go back and look at the game, that we've seen Conway come off his wing to the opposite edge. We see Earlsey slip in on like a small little pop pass off Farrell. He goes through a gap. Like, there's definitely, for me, there was definite improvements in terms of the ability to
I agree.
Get around, get square, and get set early. And it was just the fact that it was almost like, not trying too hard, but the way sometimes you're looking to move the ball so much that things are breaking down, and you can't reset it then because you're still trying to keep move the ball, and it's really difficult then to try and for someone then to say, okay, look, let's just go 2 hard pods here, we set it up, we can go again. It was almost just like they needed to reset themselves a small bit. But I definitely do think there was definitely a lot of half small breaks. I think that, and you're right that Haley won the offload, but that's a want and an intent to try and keep the ball alive.
Yeah,
and we haven't really seen that a huge amount. So I thought that was an improvement.
At the end of the day, if you look at the way Ireland played in November, the accuracy, the lines are running, the pace, Munster have enough of ball to be able to try and replicate a little bit of that. Okay, I'm not saying they have to do it perfectly. Watch Leinster at the weekend. They're playing a very weakened Montpellier side, but one of the things, I was at the game doing commentary, is just the timing, the comfortable timing, the lines they run. And I just think when I watch Munster at times, it's just they're getting in a bit of a knot, they're getting in each other's way. And sometimes when the passes are on, they're not given that pass. So there's a little bit of confusion there.
Yeah.
I believe the players themselves have to stay positive. And you know what? Sometimes it just takes a couple of passes sticking and a big performance to get them to the next level. And so look, we won't take it away from going to France, winning any time. You know, we know Castres were weakened, but they were always going to make it difficult. Even if, no matter who Castres had there, I think it was a game that Munster had the ability to win, but they could have made it more comfortable for themselves.
Yeah.
And at times, Niamh, and I think you as a coach will know this, they just look like the work rate is brilliant and they're working hard here in this game on Friday night, taking this stand alone. But again, they look like a team that are not in control. They give it back too easily. They turn it over. They lose the line out. And I just think they need to, rather than thinking maybe we're jumping to step 4 here with the attack, they just need to become a bit more ruthless and really kind of take it out of the opposition and be more efficient there. And then maybe some space will open up. So
you just hit the nail on the head there. Sorry, could he interrupt you? Just hit the nail on the head. They've got to be way more efficient. So I think they had 4, maybe 5, knock-ons in contact. So they've kind of put a couple of phases together, maybe got a half break, soft shoulder, and then they've knocked the ball on in the tackle. That's got to be really frustrating for them. So yeah, look, I think small improvements. I think for where this group were, 3 or 4 weeks ago against Connacht, I think that's probably what you're judging them off at the moment, because it's basically, this group have had 2, maybe 1 or 2 games together now. You'd like to think the same group will be playing again next week. That's 3 games on the bounce. When was the last time this group of players? I'm talking about Keith Earls, Andrew Conway, Conor Murray, the big players are going to be playing week in, week out. And for me, that's a huge thing that we're not really speaking about it much, because they looked ring rusty, to be fair, at times.
Yeah, they did. There's still issues there for sure. The results was really good, but it could have very easily. Gavin Coombs comes up at the end, and they showed a lot of character to score the try and to get into that position in the end. But I think it was a game that should have been won a lot earlier. There should have been a lot more control, and they made it really difficult. But credit, they showed character at the end, and Gavin Coombs gets a try, and they get out of there.
How good is Coombs coming into form now? Look, he's phenomenally powerful.
Yeah, he is, and I still would like to see a little bit more attitude. I think he's a brilliant player. He's still maturing, but so effective. He's a brilliant player, but I think there's a lot more in him. As a lot of the players, I think, Craig Casey coming off the bench showed a lot of zip as well. You mentioned Conor Murray. I think he did what he had to do in the game and played really well up to that point. I just think the pack was disjointed at times. Peter O'Mahony had a really good performance, and someone has to kind of step up all the time for this team now. So they're lacking a little bit. If I was to read out all the comments online, there's a mixture. Some are saying great win, great steal, great guts. Their backs are to the wall. They got the results. Others are saying it was terrible. So there is a mixture, and that is the mood that's out there. So we're trying to, I suppose, and probably if we probably agree in this, we're somewhere in the middle. There is positives, but there's plenty of negatives as well that you just have to, in professional sport, you have to address, and you have to talk about them and look at them. So the other positives, I think, was Jack Crowley. We spoke about, I would have liked to have selected him anyway leading into this game, we're not sure if that would have happened. But it did happen because the injury to
Ben Healy.
Ben Healy wasn't available. So, if we were putting the two of them together last week, I was saying Jack Crowley. And I thought there was a bit of spark. There was a bit of creativity out of him. And I think he will grow in confidence and mature. So I thought his performance was really good. Someone who came off the bench and really impressed me was John Hodnett. And every time I see this guy, he's an out-and-out 7. He's powerful. He's a brilliant chop tackler, and he's a turnover machine. He is someone that I was really impressed with. And I suppose the unfortunate thing, Niall Scannell and Damien Dialende are not available this week. But they've got to get better, because Wasps beat Toulouse at home at the weekend, missing a hell of a lot of players, and they come to Thomond Park on Sunday. And if they win, Wasps, they'll qualify. Munster already qualified. So what's the approach here at Sunday? Is it to try and find that little bit of a ruthless side to themselves for their own development, and try and get some passes to stick and get a good performance, more of an 80-minute performance out of the team. Wasps are definitely capable of causing them problems. But what was your take, just before we go on to the Wasps game, of Jack Crowley and your overall impression of him?
Yeah, I was, really pleased with how he played. I love the fact that if he has a mistake or two, just his ability to get over it very quickly is just his temperament. He looks like he's loads of time on the ball, which is brilliant. But, there would have been question marks. This young guy coming down to France, and Castres basically targeted him, ran down his channel. He was the top tackler for Munster on Friday night. Now, it's not something you want. You don't want to pretend tackling the whole time. But his physicality was brilliant. His line speed in defence. We'll talk, everybody will be talking about his attacking game, but he's so solid in that defensive line that, he doesn't give him any worries. Kicked very well. I just think it was a really, really good performance. I'd love to see him back in the mix again next weekend.
Yeah, it's good for his confidence that, he was in that kind of an environment. So looking ahead to Wasps, I did the game at the weekend on Virgin Media, and Saturday, and I did Wasps, commentated for Wasps Toulouse. I thought before the game that this, I was trying to figure out, would Wasps cause them any problems? Was it going to be a big score line? And you kind of want to look forward to a game and hope you get a great game of rugby. And I just thought Wasps Toulouse were going to really overpower them, and it was going to be one-way traffic. But incredibly, it wasn't. That wasn't the case. Wasps ended up winning the game against all odds with 14 men. Did you see it? And what kind of an impact will that have on Wasps coming to Thomond Park at the weekend?
Yeah, I watched it. I thought it was a brilliant performance. I thought this back rower, Alfie Bradbury, was just outstanding. Like, he is unbelievable. I see he got called up into the English squad for the first time this morning. This young kid who's literally I thought he was excellent before he went off injured against Munster in the first game over in Coventry. And he's just, a one-man wrecking ball. I thought he was just brilliant. And they play a really good brand. We spoke beforehand, before we came on today, about Jimmy Goppert and how influential he is. And they still have a huge amount of players injured, but they're still turning up really good performances. Now, the big thing is that, their consistency. So they've not been very consistent in the Premiership. Were poor against Munster in the first game in Coventry, and then win again last weekend. But it's also a case that, Toulouse, just typical French team, just didn't turn up to play an away game in a Champions Cup. So, but they're coming to Thomond Park with 100% knowledge that if they win, that they're going to be in the knockout stages, as you said earlier on. Like, what more motivation do you want? Big scalp with Munster, they bet them already, and yeah, I think that this is a brilliant opportunity for them. And if you're Lee Beckett and you're running them up for the week, that's what you're talking about. You're talking about how they had their own issues in the first game, and nobody spoke about them. Everybody was speaking about Munster and their youngsters, and nobody really gave them their fair dues. I just think that They have the potential to be very dangerous, and hopefully look to be a really good game.
Well, does it really? It's a stupid question. Does it really matter if Munster win this? Of course it matters.
Yeah. No, it matters a lot, Quinny. Whatever about wanting to win a game, it matters a huge amount on the back of the last two performances for me. They've got to keep improving. They've got to keep showing continuity, and they've got to go and win, because Munster at home in Thomond Park, a Champions Cup game, you know, you've got to still hold that ruthlessness, that fear that other teams, you know, you have when they come. Like when you played in Thomond Park, right, back in those big European nights, you've the best teams in the world coming. They just didn't want to be there. Do you know what I mean? They've got to get that back. So I think that it's really important that Munster win this game.
So if they have another flat performance on Sunday and get across the line and have four from four in the pool stages, is there an argument to say, well, that's job done? They've got into round 16. They won't finish top because we know Quins and Toulouse are a point ahead of them. I had the tables done out here. They're a point ahead. Quins play Castres at home at the weekend, so you'd expect a bonus point win there. So that would bring them to 19. Leicester play Bordeaux at home, who are potentially out of it. They have a chance as well. But you'd imagine Leicester will win and get 4-try bonus point win as well. So that brings them to 19. So if Munster were to get 5 points, the most they can get to is 18 points. So finishing third or fourth in the pool, you're not really sure. It's so hard to kind of pick who they possibly would come up against. But I agree with you. I think because of the negativity, and I know they're trying to, Johan said this himself, they're trying to block out the outside noise. But, you know, if you check with people and talk to die-hard Munster fans, some of them are a little bit blinded by their loyalty, and they don't want to criticize. Others then are frustrated and a bit angry. So I think they need a performance. Not necessarily this brilliant performance that we say everything was perfect. I think they need to get for themselves, and I think that's what they'll be striving for. And Wasps are a real threat on Sunday, and I think that they have a chance themselves of getting into the knockout stages. So it'll be interesting. Would you make any changes to the team? Would you persist with Jack Crowley? Would you bring John Hodnett in? Would you bring Craig Casey in? Thomas Ahern, I thought, he's a guy that I just think needs to be in that team because he brings so much energy. He's still a little bit inexperienced for sure, and maybe doesn't have the same power as some seasoned internationals. But would you make any changes to the team?
Obviously, the case for John Hodnett is huge, because every time he's played over the last, since he's come back from his injury, the Wasps game, he's just been absolutely excellent. But it's a lot to do with balance too, to be fair. And I think, Jack O'Donoghu's, whilst may not get the headlines for the big breaks, does a lot of work on the ground, incredibly good defensively, and huge amount of pace. So yeah, look, it's interesting. I think John Hodnett's brilliant. I'd like to see him in there, because I think that's the type of game that he'll relish. And if you're a Wasps player or management that played against him in the first round, you see his name on the team sheet, you're going to be thinking, oh God, again, because he was excellent that day. And yeah, I like the case for Tom Ahern too, to be fair. I think that these guys, it's very difficult. I think it's hard to think about, like Jack Crowley's 22, he's had a handful of, appearances for Munster. We talked about Marcus Smith over in Harlequins having a ridiculous amount of caps at the same age. And I know he's a bit of an outlier, but I just think that we've got to give opportunities to these young lads. I think that. Yeah,
I just think on Jack Crowley, if you go back, and this is no disrespect to Ben Healy, all the people up in Nina and North Tipperary will kill me this, because I'm a fan of Ben Healy's as well. But I just think Crowley needs to start again. He needs another game. He dropped 2 balls against Ulster in the Ulster game. He dropped the ball the other night where he took his eye off the ball on his own 22 and it was kicked over to him. So that's something he needs to be better at for sure. But I just think to have the opportunity for him to get to the next level and show that confidence and that quality that he has, I think you've got to pick him. Just on the John Hadden one, I think, yeah, I'm not advocating to drop anyone, because I think Jack O'Donoghue reacted really well from a really poor performance in Galway, and he was, his reaction off the bench against Ulster and at the weekend, Friday night against Castres was good, and he's delivered a lot. But I just think Hadden brings that spark, he brings that energy. Damien Dialinde is a loss, but credit to Rory Scannell, he's had to live in the shadow of Dialinde for the big games over the last couple of seasons, and I thought he played well, and I think Rory Scannell, there's a lot more to Rory Scannell than just crashing the ball up the middle. I think he has good hands, and so hopefully we get a better performance. I think Wasps are going there with a lot of injuries still, but they'll be buoyed by that was an incredible result against Toulouse at the weekend with 14 men. And their back row was outstanding. Tom Willis, Brad Shields and Alfie Barbary, who, as you say, has been called up to the English squad. So it'll be interesting. And I think we're all craving for at least a 50, 60-minute performance against Wasps. But the danger is, they'll get so much from that Toulouse game, and there'll be a bit of an edge to them coming to Thomond Park after what happened over in the game in Coventry in round one. So it's one to look forward to, 3:15 on Sunday, and hopefully they can finish. A couple of other points to talk about before we finish. We didn't get a chance to talk about RG Snyman last week before the pod, because it was announced after we did that. We did have chats the previous week, and I said that I'd heard positive things about him staying, which I couldn't wait to hear. And when I heard that last week, I just, I genuinely felt this is what they need. To put it in context, he's 2 years, he's here a year and a half. He's been injured. He's not going to probably play this season. But I just think for him to make a decision to stay, I just loved it, because he had offers to go back to Japan. He had offers in France. A lot of clubs were very, very keen in this guy. I put a tweet up saying that, he was a legend. Well, you can take the legend word in different ways. We often say to our mates, you're a legend this or you're a legend that. But I just meant he is a legend, and he'll be remembered for this. And I think I'd be positive.
How did the reaction go on Twitter, Quinny, when you called him a legend?
Well, some people agreed, and some people were obviously querying how was he a legend? Yeah, well, this one guy, a couple of them started naming off the guys who played over 200 times for Munster and won European Cups and all that stuff. But it's in different context. He could have left. He's taken a pay cut to stay with Munster. That is the reality. Could have went back to Japan and said, look, didn't work out. I've got well paid here. I'm gone. Now, Munster did show loyalty as well to him, to offer him this contract and try and keep him. I think everyone believes and wants to see RG Snyman play for Munster and get a proper run, and show the quality and the world-class talent that he is. But I just think it was great news that he
proper
signed.
legend. Proper legend.
You think he was a legend? What's your definition of a legend? Google it there.
In relation to Munster, it's no offense to RG, but it's not RG. I'm afraid it's Axel, it's Rog, it's Paulie, it's Mick Galway. I'm throwing you into the mix if you're. You okay? That's my definition. Peter O'Mahony, these guys that are. But I actually saw the tweet. I had a giggle, and then I saw the reactions, and I had a proper laugh. But look. You're completely entitled, and I know you're a huge fan of him.
I was kind of fishing a little bit.
No, you're the biggest fangirl to RG I've ever met before. But look, it's brilliant for Munster, brilliant signing, a real statement of intent. I think if they can, get him fit and keep him healthy. We saw, in the URC at the start of the season, that game he came off the bench and the crowd just got a huge lift from it. And then to get the try, which was ridiculous. It was like the ball was like a potato in his hand. It was so small. So he obviously has X factor. But I think you're right. We won't see him this season, and hopefully next season, he can repay the due and try and work towards that legendary status that you're so keen to get.
I still think he's a legend for signing. This guy's been through a lot with the 2 injuries, and I know what it's like. It can be a tough situation, having those injuries. His mum passed away a number of months ago as well, and so he's been through a lot. And maybe I'm skewed by that a little bit, and feeling that compassion and empathy for him, but I just think it's a good sign of his character, that he said, in simple terms, I want to repay Munster here, and I want to play. I want to show people in Munster and deliver something to that for them before he leaves these shores. So I think it's great news.
No, it's brilliant.
Just on the coaching front, Damien Dialenda, it's been speculated that he's going back to Japan. I think I've seen reports of that in the last couple of days. I think that's pretty evident that he's leaving. Can't really fault him, because in fairness, he's played at a very high. His performances have been very, very good anytime he's played for Munster. Just on the coaching front, it's been announced today that JP Ferreira, the defensive coach, is leaving. Go to back with Johan, which probably in the scheme of things makes sense that he was part of that coaching group. He probably has a close affinity with Johan, and really, I think it didn't surprise me, is what I'm saying. So Munster now have to get a head coach, a backs coach, and a defensive coach. Did it surprise you in any way, or is maybe is it? And I mean this very respectfully to JP, because he's a lovely fella, and I think he's done a very good job. Maybe it's good. This one is probably good for both sides, that he would probably be left as part of Johan's legacy and his group, that maybe it's best to have a clean cut here at the end of the season as well.
Yeah, look, I think ridiculously sound guy. Like, you meet and chat to him, he's really good. And I think Munster are quite good defensively. But you always get coaches who, align themselves to other coaches like Razzie and Jack. I think that Johan came with JP, and so it's not really a big surprise that he's going. But I think he's had a huge influence. I think it's been understated, because we've been so concentrated on Munster's lack of attack at times.
Yeah, we don't really hear from him, do we? We never hear from
what
him.
A good job. Yeah. And he's very quiet. When I was rehab my last injury, be in the gym with him quite a bit in the mornings, and a lovely guy, really nice, and he's done a really good job. And I think that, to be fair, Bath are getting a very good defensive coach. But no, I wasn't surprised, because they come as a duo, and I think that's not a something that doesn't happen very often. It actually happens quite a bit, where you get coaches that come in with their one or two of their own backroom team. And I do think that what's coming now in terms of the appointments that come in, that head coach, they have the ability then to build their own team around them. They could come with a defensive coach, or they could come with somebody that that they trust and they understand, who knows their philosophies. And so yeah, I'm putting it on record. I do think that he's done an excellent job, and I think that it's been understated, because we've been so concentrated on Munster's lack of attack. I think they've been very good defensively for a lot of JP's term.
Yeah, we'll probably hear in the next couple of weeks, I think, regarding the head coach, assistant coaches, and now a defensive coach. So it'll be an interesting time to see where all that goes in the next few weeks. And as you say, the head coach comes in, he might want to bring someone with him. But I think it's no harm in attack, defense, and from a head coach's point of view. These changes are happening. We need something different. We need some energy. We need some new ideas, and we need just someone to bring a real positive vibe into the coaching ticket again. And I think the defensive coach is really, really, and any defensive coach that I've ever worked with, they're a vital part of really motivating a team as well, because you really can build stuff on your actions around whether you have the ball, making that tackle, or without the ball as well, around work rate. So most of them are massive into that.
Yeah,
so
defense for me is huge. Defense for me is a huge mental thing. I think that if you have the ability to gets your players to the pitch mentally in terms of enjoying not having the ball, then, you know, that's a win. So I do think that Munster are very good without the ball.
Yeah. Okay, we've got to leave it there. We'll be back next week with more thoughts and reaction from the return fixture against Wasps. And, you know, fingers crossed it's better. But if it's not, we'll have to deal with it. And they play Zebra then, and then obviously the international. So it's going to be this little bit of continuity. Hopefully we can see it a little bit better on Sunday. Don't forget to get in touch with your thoughts on all things Munster throughout the week. And we're sure to get them on next week's podcast. We're definitely going to focus on seeing what your reactions are next week and reading out some of the comments. You can tweet us at Rugby Channel 15 or search for the Rugby Channel on YouTube and leave a comment. Make sure you subscribe to the Red 78 wherever you get your podcasts, and we'll see you next week.
The Munster Rugby Podcast, Red 78 with Quinlan and Niamh Briggs. Nobody knows Munster Rugby better.